Thanks for joining us on Next Level Up. Today's guest is Andy Galpin. He's the founder of Tree and Leaf Partners. He's a redemptive acquisition entrepreneur, which is a mouthful, but it's pretty awesome because he's not just searching for deals, but for unfinished visions that he feels worth carrying forward. From IBM Consulting to sharing my love for Tolkien and Uganda, from engineering to theology to Kellogg, Andy blends systems, souls, and strategy in how he approaches business transactions. Andy, great to have you on with us today.
It's great to be with you, John. I'm excited for our conversation today.
I ditto. So let's start as our kind of thing goes is let's start with the past. Take us back. How'd you get from building websites and working at IBM to founding a purpose-driven acquisition firm?
It's been a journey, to say the least. And I think Tolkien's analogy of that is a great analogy of most of our lives and most of our careers. They very rarely kind of go up in a straight line. They're a bit wiggly and they go a little bit all over the place.
Yeah.
So as you alluded to, I started off building websites in high school. Really just saw that as a problem our local community had in being visible and getting customers to access them through the web in the early days of the web. I feel very old when I say that, John. I don't know how you feel.
Don't worry. I think I helped build one of the 200th or so first. It was still a Gopher server, believe it or not.
Yeah.
It was
Wow.
serving the pages, so I feel you. We are old. That's okay. It's okay.
Yeah, and I really love the idea of using technology to solve problems. That's probably the thread that connects all the different things that I've done. So I did engineering as my undergrad, again, very technology focused, spent some time in an engineering firm, but realized that I didn't like how narrow engineering was. I really loved the mindset and the skill set of applying this kind of engineering thinking to different problems, but I didn't like doing it in the same problem over and over again. It's probably why I got a little bit bored of building websites. I was like, another website? Do we really need another one? So joined IBM out of undergrad, was in the consulting side of the business. And really my focus was to build more meaningful experiences for our clients, customers, and employees. So how do we understand the process that exists at the moment and make it better, often through technology? And that, again, is coming back to that common theme of using technology to solve problems and create a better experience. But after 6 years at there, John, I got a little tired of the consulting lifestyle and the consulting role, that you're always giving advice and it's always up to the client to decide, am I going to listen to this? Am I going to agree with it, but still do nothing? Or am I actually going to drive a change in my business? And I thought, I want to be the one making that decision, building and shaping the culture and changing the organization to deliver that more meaningful experience for both my employees and my customers. So I pivoted out of consulting. I came across the pond and did a 2-year MBA at Kellogg, as you mentioned. And for me, that was really around, how do I take what I like about consulting, but bring in this element of ownership and accountability and actually being able to build a place that people really love coming to work? And I think that's something we've talked about before, John, that kind of so many people don't enjoy their jobs. So I got to the point where, like, are we building companies that people can actually do that and have the opportunity to use the skills they've been given to really make a difference in the world? So that's the ethos I've kind of carried forward into what we're doing now.
Yeah, totally feel like we're cut from the same cloth. Slightly different paths a little bit, but at the end of the day, I remember taking one of those personality and things, and it's John is the guy you want to have packing your parachute for the first 2 times he does it. Because he'll be super detailed, he'll want to understand everything, but after that, he'll cut corners, et cetera, et cetera. So I get the idea of putting a nut on a bolt is something that would just drive me insane very quickly. So I get that. So talk to me, redemptive entrepreneurship. That is not a term that is, at least for me, thrown around very often. Give me just kind of the high level what that actually means for you.
Yeah, well, as they say, marketing 101 is to find something to describe yourself in a little bit of a unique way. So entrepreneurship for me, before I came to the US, was all about starting companies from scratch. And I knew that I was built to make things better, not to build things from scratch. And that's a lot of the work I did at IBM. So the idea of starting a company never really appealed to me. I did that once with the web and graphics design. I was like, this is such hard work. My heart goes out to founders who build things from scratch, because it is
Yeah.
hard work and it's a skill set that some people have and some people don't enjoy executing. And that's where I fit in. I fit in more around how do we grow and scale this? How do we make things better? And I was introduced when I went to business school to this concept of entrepreneurship through acquisition, and the idea of buying something that someone's already started. They've done that hard work of product market fit and building it from 0 to 10, but they need someone else to help take it from 10 to 100, or from 50 to 500, whatever that looks like. And that's often a different skill set, and not everyone has both, and not everyone enjoys both. Some people really love building companies from scratch, but they don't actually like it when a company turns into more of an administrative job where you're looking at systems and managing hundreds of people rather than focused on building something that really solves a problem. So that idea of reframing entrepreneurship was really key for me. And then the redemptive word comes from kind of the idea of fixing and redeeming the world to how it was originally designed to be. And I borrowed that language from an incubator called Praxis Labs, and they talk about a redemptive business framework where we're looking at the world and going, how can we restore it to how it was originally designed, redeem it, buy it back for the original creation. So we're looking at businesses that really understand why they exist and have a really strong purpose in what they're solving and the problem they're solving in the world. And through that business existing, the world becomes a better place. So a lot of businesses end up profiting from making problems in the world. We look for businesses that profit from solving problems and fixing things that are wrong in both the business world and in society at large. So we spend a lot of time in education and healthcare because they're just very naturally purpose driven, but you still get very redemptive businesses in that space. And then other businesses, particularly in healthcare, where it's such a black box in the US, which are less redemptive, maybe ethical. Maybe on the
more
borderline.
Commercial. Yeah, right.
Exactly.
Yeah. They're out there to drive the dollar, right? I get that.
Exactly.
And look, I think
and pulling stuff from people and taking stuff from the ecosystem rather than contributing something of value.
Yeah, and I get also, when I was doing EOS implementation for companies, same thing. First they gotta already have reached terminal velocity and gotten into orbit, or else there's not much to do there. And for me, it was kind of I like the 50 to 150-ish, maybe up to 200, because as soon as you start adding middle management, for me, a lot of times it starts becoming politics and fiefdom building and everything else, instead of, to your point, having an actual culture and vision that is really purpose bound, instead of just showing up, collecting your check, making the dollars. I always feel, and I think you are the same way, right? All that for EBITDA, et cetera, is going to come, if you provide value and you hit your purpose, all that'll come. That's like gravy, right?
Yeah. And I like to think of it as profit as a measure of how sustainable the business is. If we're making money, the business is sustainable. But when that becomes the reason the business exists, we then start exploiting our people and extracting stuff from the environment and the natural resources around us without actually building something that's sustainable in the long term. We sacrifice those long-term ongoing profits for a very short-term kind of flash in the pan kind of approach to business, which is what we thought.
And it's another ethos for me, is like, it's a very zero sum game look of how to do things, instead of actually realizing, God has created abundance. So it's, everything's good. Just do the right thing and you'll get it back tenfold. Right. So, all right, well, that brings us into the current. What's the current focus for Tree and Leaf? And like, how did that, I know that came out of Kellogg and everything else, but what kind of company are you looking to steward?
Yeah, so I'm focused, and I use the imagery of Tolkien, and this is where we connected with, wasn't it, John? And his short story called Leaf by Niggle. And I think this really captures what I'm trying to do. And it was written by Tolkien in between The Hobbit and the trilogy. And many people, maybe your listeners, perhaps aren't as big Tolkien fans as we are, John. But they might not realize it took him.
We'll probably pull nerd pretty good. Don't worry. I think it'll be all right.
It took him 30 years to write the trilogy. So after The Hobbit, he wrote this little short story to really capture the immensity of the task that he felt was ahead of himself that ultimately took him 30 years. And for me, the story is about a painter called Niggle that has this vision of a painting. And it's not just the picture of a leaf, it's a picture of a tree that has leaves. And it's not just a single tree, it's a forest with lots of trees in it. It's not just a forest, but it's a whole valley with mountains and the sunshine in the background. So it's a big vision and a big image. But Niggle always gets distracted by the everyday life. And as a business owner, I'm sure all our listeners can relate to that. There's so many things that come up in life that just drag us away from what we feel kind of we're called to do and what we should be doing. And Niggle reaches the end of his life without finishing this painting. And for me, that's a really good analogy of what I'm looking for in a business owner. It's someone who had that vision for a business that was much bigger than just a leaf, but it was a whole valley full of trees and full of leaves in that. And rather than the picture ending when they finish working in the business or when they're ready to retire, why not pass that paintbrush on to someone else and see them continue building out the picture? And I view companies as far beyond one generation and far beyond one lifetime. So I won't finish that picture, but I'll pass that on to someone else who will continue building out that picture. And I think Tolkien did that with his work in defining the genre of fantasy. And so many fantasy authors have learned and taken those ideas. And we've built a whole ecosystem, a whole genre around fantasy from Tolkien's work. And I think that's the analogy that I think really resonates with what I want to do. Take something small and use it to create a big impact and have ripples in the world.
Yeah, and I mean, it really ties into the fact that you look at founder legacy as much more important, like we said, than EBITDA or profit. All those things will come. But I do love the vision. It's just like music, right? Music is built upon itself century over century. So obviously, you have some basic search criteria, right? Strong culture, a purpose-driven thing. Talk to me about, one of the things that I am interested in is like, let's talk about even when you get to due diligence, right? Because I think that is such a critical piece, and being part of the acquisition. And my company was purchased was an exit, successful exit. I've been on the other side of it where we've been acquiring people, mergers of equals, et cetera, right? And to me, that's one of the biggest, I wouldn't call it struggles, but that's the obstacle, right? Like, how do you determine this company really is what they say it is? It's almost like a relationship, right? Like, you think this person has positive things and all, these other aspects. Like, how do you see that going, and how's that been going for your process?
Yeah, for us, it is always built on a foundation of trust. So one of the go no go criteria on our scorecard is, do I trust the seller? And this can change over time as you build a relationship and spend time with each other. But I think this is really important. And often if there's something niggling at you and you have questions and things don't seem to be adding up, that's enough of an indication that something isn't right, that we probably wouldn't move forward with something. Because what we know about the business as an external person coming in is only this much compared to John, who's running his business and in the weeds, and he knows that kind of in and out. So we look for that trust to be built over time. We don't kind of close a transaction incredibly fast, because we want time to build that relationship and both determine fit on either side. You are going to be handing off your legacy, something you've spent 20, 30 years building, John. You want to make sure I'm the right person to run this company, to look after your employees, to look after your customers, and to represent you well in taking on that business and growing it. And that doesn't happen quickly. There's time to understand kind of, what are my values? What are your values? How do they align? And what's our vision for the company, and painting that picture together. And we both probably have different skill sets that we're trying to align with and determine what the match is. So what's the gap that we're leaving when you step out of the business, for example? And what new things am I bringing in that might take the company in a slightly different direction? And working together to try and map out what that looks like and what success looks like in that space.
Yeah, it's awesome. So can you share like a founder conversation that just kind of made you think, wow, this one hits different? Like and again, hopefully a positive way, but maybe I don't want to share any gossip, but like, good.
Yeah, I went to Canada for a deal. It was my second time in Montreal. And I met with the owner of a business who was in his late 60s, early 70s. And he was ready to sell the business because he wanted to go back to driving essentially NASCARs.
Nice. All right.
This guy
Awesome.
was twice the age of anyone else on the track, but he was clearly living life and living a full life, and really enjoyed what he was doing. And he'd had a scare with a recent accident, and his kids had basically said, you need to sort this out in case you're in another accident and you're no longer here. But he was so intentional about who he sold the business to and protecting that I actually met him after he'd run a formal process. He'd turned down offers that were 3 or 4 times as much as other offers, because he didn't think they were the right fit for his people and how he wanted them to lead the business. And then he'd gone into conversations with 3 or 4 people, and one after the other, he'd turned them down because he didn't feel they were the right fit for the culture in the organization. So for me, that was someone who was being very intentional about who is going to step into this business and what impact is that going to have on my customers, on my employees, and on the product I've spent 20, 30 years building. And for him, it was really important that one of his competitors didn't just buy him for the customer book. So it's like, we've built a really good product. I think it's better than all our competitors. And I don't want to just sell to a competitor for them to throw that all away, get rid of all my employees and move my customers onto their platform. So he was being very intentional and very protective about the human capital and the social capital that they built up in the company, not just the financial capital that they had the opportunity to unlock. And that was going to cost him money, and he would leave money on the table as a result of that. And I think that's why it's really important that it comes back down to trust. Because if I buy your business from you, John, and then next week I go sell it to that highest bidder that was offering 3 times as much, you're not going to feel great about that. I'm not going to feel great about that. Some people might survive that. But for me, that's not the relationship we're building, and that's not the reason that we're doing it.
Yeah, and I'm sure, unfortunately, there are people that would not lose any sleep, but I get it. It's great too. So obviously, that's a green flag for that guy as far as what it's going. So besides trust, what are other red flags that kind of get your gut to be like,
Yeah, yeah. There are some generalized red flags and some kind of more specific. For us in the culture realm, I like to ask the owner questions about their employees and understand how much he knows them and how much he understands them. Can he tell me their names? That's usually quite easy. Can he tell me their families? Does he have an understanding of their priorities in the business, their dreams, their ambitions? Have they been intentional about crafting their benefits to align with what their employees need and something that would add value to their lives? So one of the benefits I really love that some companies have is this concept of a dream manager. And this is essentially a hybrid on a life coach or a kind of financial advisor that just sits with people kind of once a quarter and asks them what their dreams are and helps them understand the steps they need to take to get there. And so if they've got a program like that, that's a really big kind of green flag that says, hey, I've been very intentional about paying for something that really is going to benefit my employees and help them unlock things in their life that get more satisfaction. I don't just care about what they do in 9 to 5 and how much value they contribute towards that. So things like that we look for that are positive, and the opposite of that can be kind of more negative.
Yeah, I love that. It's one of the first really aha moments when I started managing people was like, oh, they want things that I probably don't. Like, it was like that, why some of the best sports people aren't great coaches is because they're like, just go do what I would do, but I'm not you, bro. Like I do different things. So it's really awesome. And some of the most proud people that left my company were ones where we knew they weren't. It's like, dude, you don't want to be here. You want to go do XYZ, and you got stuck, making a paycheck. Let's make that happen, right? So I definitely have had those same positive impacts to be like, okay, dude, it's, next 4 months we got to work on you getting to the job you really want instead of just showing up here to work.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, it's great.
And often what we'll do later in the diligence process is try and speak to some previous employees. So imagine the difference between that employee that you've described there, John, where you've helped them get to a job that's outside your company, that's a better fit for them. What are they going to say about your company versus someone who you've quietly pushed out the door because you didn't really want to invest in it, or someone who just was underpaid and underappreciated and has gone somewhere else? You're going to get a very different perspective on the company they've just left and how much they value that experience.
Yeah, I totally got that. And I love the fact that you're looking like, again, it just shows how much you care about having that fit be right.
Mhm.
So let's look ahead, right? 2, 3 years from now, what's the vision and what do you think both opportunities and challenges are going to be for Tree and Lee?
Yeah, so the vision is to be actively operating and leading one business that's solving a real problem in the world and empowering their people to collectively use their skills to address that. So we're looking for a company that's thriving, that's on the great places to work list, whether kind of just the people represented or we've actually got kind of ticks in those boxes. And then I'd also love to go down the B Corp route. And I think this is a really interesting legal structure that just reinforces the identity of the company of being about more than generating profit and having a value outside of that. So that's the vision that we're running that and actively doing that. And the business is growing and thriving as a result of that.
That's awesome, dude. So again, if anybody here has been listening, is maybe a seller who thinks you're a good fit, somebody that would have questions, think they could support you in any of that, do you want to give them some info on how to reach out to you and get a hold of you?
Yeah, most sellers are not going to be a fit for me. 99 out of 100 are not going to be the right fit because
Yeah.
we prioritize looking after employees, building a long-lasting legacy, and growing a company sustainable over time. And if you're just looking for the largest paycheck to help you retire and buy a golf course, then that's really not going to be a fit. So there's only a small number of people that are a good fit for us. If you think that's you or you want to explore that and have a conversation, head to our website, treeleafpartners.com. Or if you just want to understand more about my leadership ethos, I post a lot on LinkedIn and talk a lot about how we think about leading and driving culture. You can find me, I'm Andy D. Galpin, or drop me an email, andy@treeleafpartners.com.
Andy, this has been a great conversation. It challenges really how we define business value, expands what we think about legacy and what we're leaving behind. Thanks for bringing the clarity, the conviction, and the humanity to the world. I'm excited to really share your story, and it was a great conversation.
Thanks, John. Appreciate your time.